The AA Daily Reflections for June 20th. Release from fear. The problem of resolving fear has two aspects. We shall have to try for all the freedom from fear that is possible for us to attain. Then we shall need to find both the courage and grace to deal constructively with whatever fears remain. That's from As Bill Sees It, page 61. I'm going to read that again. It didn't come out right. The problem of resolving fear has two aspects. We shall have to try for all the freedom from fear that is possible for us to attain. Okay, that's one way to say it. Why not just say we got to figure out how to get rid of most of the fear? Then we shall need to find both the courage and grace to deal constructively with whatever fears remain. All right. Most of my decisions were based on fear. Alcohol made life easier to face, but the time came when alcohol was no longer an alternative to fear. One of the greatest gifts in AA for me has been the courage to take action, which I can do with God's help. After 5 years of sobriety, I had to deal with a heavy dose of fear. God put the people in my life to help me do. God put the people in my life to help me do that, and through my working the 12 steps, I'm becoming the whole person I wish to be, and for that, I am deeply grateful. Okay, fear. I kind of put anxiety with fear. It manifests itself in me as anxiety. You know, I think if I peel the onion back, then I can certainly say that, okay, this is probably based on fear. But when I'm anxious or neurotic, I know that that's the barometer for me to look at myself, what's going on with me spiritually. I like what they have in here. Of course, I like everything. But the time came when alcohol was no longer an alternative to fear. And I think, at least for myself, there was a point where, it worked and then it didn't work. And it worked from the standpoint of I just didn't care what was going on when I was drinking. I didn't care about the repercussions that I had from my drinking. It just made me not care. And then it got to the point where the wheels just fell off. And it started causing way more problems than it was solving, if that makes sense. Every morning when I get up, I say the Serenity Prayer like 4 or 5 times. It's legitimately either the first thing or one of the first things that I do is I just keep saying the Serenity Prayer over and over and over again. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. AA for me has been the courage to take action, which I can do with God's help. After 5 years of sobriety, I had to deal with a heavy dose of fear. God put the people in my life to help me do that, and through my working the 12 steps, I am becoming the whole person I wish to be. For that, I am deeply grateful. The crappy thing about this is it takes time and experience to really get to that point. And even when you get to that point, I'll give you an example here in a second. Even when you get to that point, like there's no guarantee that you just remain at that point. Depending upon spirituality or what my spiritual level is, I go right back to my basic instincts, which step 4 talks about are maladjusted instincts and misaligned instincts. And I like that because it means that I don't really have control over it. I mean, I can treat it, but I can't really control that they're there because they're instincts. Okay. I don't know what I was saying. I love that we have an option here, right? I love that taking action. So, I always felt like I was a victim, or I was afflicted by the world, or I couldn't control how I felt, or I was justified or trapped with how I interacted with other people in the world. But the great thing about taking action is that we don't even have to know what action to take. We can pray about it, we can have an idea about it, and then we just start walking in a direction. And in my experience, if you start walking in a direction, like I always used to tell people in business, because I did some business development before, I always told them, this is the strategy. It may not be the best strategy, but it's a strategy. And as we start to execute on this strategy, we're going to figure out how to make this strategy better. So the more we push forward, the more we're going to know how to adjust. And in a nutshell, I think that is sobriety, or a journey in sobriety, is you walk in the way that you think is God's will. And as you're doing that, or as I've done that, God kind of taps you into place. Or you get enough data to figure out, okay, this isn't necessarily the right direction to be going, but because I at least started the journey, now I know where to go, if that makes sense. One of the greatest gifts in AA. Okay, I love it when I hear the word gift in AA. The gift of desperation. And then I think it's pertinent that they use the word gift here. One of the greatest gifts in AA for me has been the courage to take action, which I can do with God's help. So I was threatened to be sued. I did a YouTube video on one of my other channels, and there's a company who was known to be litigious, and they threatened to sue me. And I went back and forth. I had to get a lawyer, went back and forth, and it was a big deal. And so every morning, this was on my mind, right? Because they were wanting a lot of money, and I talked to multiple attorneys, and one of the attorneys basically said, listen, if you can settle this for, and he put out a big number, if you can settle this for blank, you're way ahead. Even though I didn't do anything wrong, even though I was right, it was still going to cost me money just to settle it. And the advice I was getting from multiple attorneys was, you can go to court, you might win, but you're going to spend a whole bunch of money doing it. Or you can cough up some money and be done with it. Which incensed me. But so there's a lot of fear around that, because I'm like, oh my God, I work so hard. What's this going to be like? How is it going to affect the family? So I prayed every morning about it, that God's will would be done in that situation. And I got to the point where I was just like, it's fine. It's going to be fine. Because even if I have to pay a lot of money, there's some type of lesson there that a year, 2 years from now, I'll be like, oof, that's a really good thing that happened to me. Or that was a really good education. Or that was, there's great ROI on that. And had it not been for AA, the 12 steps, I never would have been able to think that way. But it was the repetition and the examples that I see in AA of people going through really difficult times and talking about it and hearing that they can do it. It's kind of, for me, it's like the 4-minute mile. The things that we think are impossible in our own lives, whether it be with sobriety or relationships or business-wise, whatever it is that we perceive to be impossible, once we see somebody else do it, then either consciously or subconsciously we understand that, well, if they did it, maybe I can do it. And as soon as somebody broke that 4-minute mile, everybody else did, because then it was not an impossibility anymore. It was possible. One person did it, and then everybody fell in line. And I think that's why this is a we program. Like, I truly believe that when I go to meetings, I hear God speak. Pretty sure it's God's will for me to go to as many meetings as I can. And you get that many different perspectives. You hear things from newcomers. You hear things from old timers. You hear authenticity and vulnerability from people that have been doing this for a long time, but, readily admit, the struggles that trying to maintain and really work this program on a daily basis. And that not only gives you comfort because you're like, oh, I struggle with that too. We don't walk a perfect path, but the point is we are walking a path, kind of like the strategy. Might not be the best strategy, but it's a strategy. And I think for me, every time I've taken action, something's good has happened, but I can't overanalyze a situation. If there's a situation that's going on and I'm having an issue with it and I'm not taking action, then I bathe in fear. I bask in it. I love it. It's so great to be in fear. One of my sponsors, Mike, if you're watching this, thank you. I used to have this big resentment against my family for not cleaning up the house because I thought I knew what they should be doing, which was cleaning the house. I was complaining about it and upset about it. And he's like, if you don't like it, change it. Do something about it. And I was like, huh. I'm like, oh, okay. It's like seeing the garbage on the floor and just wishing it away. Or seeing the garbage on the floor or the dishes in the sink and just thinking that if we become angry enough and if we shame somebody else enough and if we're angry at somebody enough and if we don't mention that anger or mention how we feel and we think that miraculously the dishes are going to clean themselves, which is absurd and it's insane. But that's part of my insanity, is thinking, wishing, subconsciously trying to communicate my seething anger towards somebody else because they're not doing the thing that I want them to do. When in reality, if I really want something done, I should just do it myself. And if that's not the issue, then that's a me problem. Because I don't get to tell anybody what I think. I don't get to determine what is best for anybody else. I don't. That's part of my problem. The more I'm in that headspace, the sicker I am. So, anyway, I've been going for 12 minutes. Appreciate you watching. If you're watching, if you're new in sobriety, go to a meeting. Get a sponsor. If you're been around for a while in sobriety, go to a meeting. Talk to your sponsor. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.